welcome to this episode of the Martial Truth Podcast, my interview with Robert Zingg Sensei. Zingg Sensei is a longtime practitioner of martial arts, very interesting background, studied several things. I'll let him talk about it. He's not a man who's lost for words, which is great when you're doing an interview. So I'll let him talk about his background and what he's doing and everything else. As always, please click that like, share, subscribe button. If you enjoy the podcast, consider becoming a monthly member. The monthly paid members, that's only $2.99 a month. This coming Sunday, November 16th at 3 p.m. Arizona time, I will be doing a class on Isshinryu body mechanics, which will apply to a lot of martial arts, right? But Isshinryu body mechanics at 3 p.m. Arizona time. Okay, so if you're a paid member, you'll be able to take advantage of that. You can type in questions, and it'll be a back and forth, all right? So that's this coming Sunday. That's something I'm hoping to do for the members of the channel on a semi-regular basis, all right? So, again, like, share, subscribe, and here's my interview with Robert Zingg. All right, so Robert Zingg, welcome to the Martial Truth Podcast. Robert Zingg is a longtime martial artist, which means like me, we're just getting older. He's a 9th Dan in Kempo, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Hanshi, and he's trained in a lot of different martial arts. And he's also one of the main people that does the Kempo full contact karate team, which he'll talk about. So this will be also a little bit of a sport martial art conversation, which will be interesting because I haven't really done that much of that. So Robert, why don't you introduce yourself, give us a little bit of your background, and then we'll go from there.
Well, thank you, sir. I really appreciate you bringing me on. It's a real honor and a pleasure, and it was a great pleasure meeting you at the seminar recently.
Yeah,
and,
I'm glad we met too, because now I get another guest for my podcast, which was good.
It's interesting that I meet, the longer I participate in martial arts, the more I meet, kindred spirits, people who have had the same experience and know many of the same people, even though we've never met before.
Right.
The fact that we know so many of the same people is like, why haven't we met before?
Right, exactly.
So it's one of those things. So my name is Robert Zingg. I live in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, for the last 40 years. Originally, I was born in California, Southern California, Corona, where my father and mother were both in the Marine Corps. And my mom had retired, but my father was still in the Marine Corps. And he was in the Marine Corps up until May of 1970. He was a World War II Marine, as was my mother. And I grew up as a Marine Corps brat. And we traveled around the country doing, the typical Marine Corps brat things. I started karate back in 1967 at Quantico Marine Corps Base, Quantico, Virginia, where my dad was stationed. He was the sergeant major of the air station down there, and he was the sergeant major of the President's Helicopter Squadron, HMX-1. Under President Johnson. And so I started karate when I was 12. One of my friends who was in school with me, who was a little Japanese kid, Carl Hovey. I don't know if you know.
Sure, I know Carl.
Carl.
Yeah.
Carl and I were in school together, and I was being bullied terribly by a bunch of kids in my classes. I was kind of a tall kid, tall, skinny, lanky, and ordinarily after being bullied, I would have fought back, but I'd had a recent father-son conversation with my dad, and he told me, he said, you don't have to fight, when things get tough. Well, what I heard was, don't ever fight.
Right.
So I kind of would shy away from fights, even though I would I want to punch this guy in the nose,
Right.
And so I didn't fight. And so I got bullied even more. And so finally, I was goaded into a fight with a smaller kid who they had goaded into fighting me, and we had been friends. And I'm like, why are we fighting? We don't dislike each other. But they kept saying, oh, he talked bad about you and all this sort of stuff. So we wound up having a kind of a stalemate fight because I didn't want to fight him, and he was little and I didn't want to hurt him. And so it was one of those things where it didn't matter how the fight came out. He would have been the victor anyway, because being little, if he'd have lost, they would say, well, the other guy was bigger, or if he'd have won, oh, he's a giant killer, that
Right,
sort of thing.
right.
Well, uh, afterwards, after the fight, Carl came up to me and says, I think you should come to my karate class. I'm like, oh, okay, And so he brought me in, and my first instructor was Don Bohan
Okay.
in Isshinryu Karate.
Sure.
And at the time, Sensei Bohan was a sixth dan, and he was a gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps. And we had classes right out on the parade ground, right across from the barracks, where most of the guys live. And it was just, half a dozen or 8 or 9 guys out there, mostly Marines, except for me and Carl, and I think one other teenager. And we were a guy named Ken Morgan. I don't know
Okay.
if you know Ken. Ken was
No.
also in the class with us, and he's a ninth dan as well.
Okay.
So out of that class,
Yeah, you
we
got a
have,
bunch because Carl
yeah,
Hovey's very senior in Isshinryu. So
yeah,
sure. Yeah.
he's a ninth dan, I believe.
Yeah.
And Ken was with in Isshinryu for many years, and he switched over under Tadashi Yamashita
Okay.
and was high rank under him. And then he's kind of branched out on his own now. And then and myself. And so I find it interesting that the three of us who were like the teenagers in the class
Right.
have gone on to become high-ranking martial artists and lifelong martial artists.
Well, I was just going to say that even the important thing is that you stuck with it.
Yes,
I
yes.
mean, it's rare you see that many guys come out of one class that stick with it for that long.
Right. And we practice every day. It's not like we like,
Right.
okay, I got my black belt, 35 years ago and I never did anything with it. No, I've been continuously training and learning from different instructors over the years. One of the big influences on my life, that who was not a direct instructor, but I did take a lot of seminars from him, and we were personal friends. I knew him when I was 14 years old, all the way to is Sensei Bill Hayes.
Sure.
And I don't know if you know Bill.
Yeah. I'm hoping to have Bill on the podcast.
Oh man, he is such a wonderful human being.
Right.
And and his outlook on the martial arts is solid information, and just his willingness to share has been a great inspiration to me over the years. So I was with Bohan Sensei for about 3 years, and then he was transferred to Vietnam.
Okay.
And then right about the same time, another instructor was being transferred into Quantico by the name of Bobby Joe Blythe. He was a fourth dan at the time in Okinawan Tozan-ryu Karate. Later, was promoted to sixth dan before he retired. And he had just opened up a school right off base. Bohan Sensei had one on base right at the parade grounds because it didn't cost anything.
Right.
And so, but Blythe Sensei, he opened up a commercial school right outside base. And so Carl used to go over there to train a little bit, and because he met Bobby Joe, we all knew each other, and I had met him and got to know him a little bit. And so when it was impractical for me to train with Carl, he said, "Hey, why don't you go down and study with that guy, Mr. Blythe?" And so I went in, introduced myself. He remembered me from when we had met earlier, and so I started studying there. And to be honest, I learned more under Mr. Blythe in 3 months than I had learned under Bohan in 3 years.
Okay.
Not to disparage Mr. Bohan, because he
No,
was an
I hear you.
excellent instructor and we did a lot of really cool stuff. But the type of information and the applicability to real life self-defense was incredible.
So let me I just want to
Okay.
ask you. So just explain a little bit about what exactly Tozan-ryu is.
Well, Tozan-ryu is a very traditional Okinawan karate style. It's a Shorinji base with the subsystem of Tozan-ryu. The master of the system or the founder of the system was Shinsuke Kaneshima, and he was a student of Choki Motobu
Okay.
and a couple other guys. And he kind of coalesced the teachings of Motobu and his other instructors into what he referred to as Tozan-ryu.
Okay.
Now, Tozan-ryu is kind of one of those names that can mean a couple of different things. It has to do with, like, I think toe can also be used as sword
Okay.
or fist. It's kind of another way to say
Right.
it. Zan, I think, is also another word for mountain, because Yama is word
Right.
for
And
mountain
yam is
too.
another word, right?
Yeah. And so it's, Japanese has that kind of there's
Right.
a lot of nuance
Well,
in the words.
it's even in Isshinryu, the word shin, right?
Right.
Shin can mean
Truth.
heart, mind, spirit. So like even me, when I say what does Isshinryu mean, I said school of one heart, mind, and spirit, right? Because
Yeah, yeah,
I just got into the habit of saying that because
right.
it really is applicable, to
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
okay, so
So, and also, it's a full contact system.
okay.
Okay. Mr. Blythe had studied Okinawan Kempo under Shigeru Nakamura.
Nakamura Sensei. Okay.
Okay. Until he passed away, uh, and the not, that Okinawan Kempo system kind of splintered into many different factions
Right.
after his death when everybody wanted to be the top guy.
Right.
So he got disgusted with it. And it just so happened the instructor that he worked closely with in that organization, his that guy's brother studied under Kaneshima. So he
Okay.
said, well, hey, if you want to find a really true martial arts system, go study with my brother's teacher. So he went over and they got an introduction, and and Kaneshima interviewed him and point blank told him, hey, I don't teach Americans. And so he said, well, that's why I want to study with you, because you don't teach Americans, and because Americans bastardize everything that they touch, it seems.
What,
And
I was just gonna say, and this is not a knock on the Okinawans, but I often say that they began teaching us karate in, let's say, the 1950s, right?
right,
On Okinawa. And, we have this idea that, oh, they were just going to teach us everything. We just finished a war with them. I mean, are they all welcoming? Are they all going to welcome every American with open arms? Is every Okinawan
right,
going to say, oh, yeah, sure, I'll teach the Americans? No, I don't think, I think the answer is no. And I don't think even those early pioneers, I don't know that they were being shown the full breadth of
right.
these systems. I think the Okinawans might have been holding some stuff back. I think, now times have changed. There's a long, long relationship now between the two countries, but and karate is obviously so international now.
Right.
It's everywhere.
Well, I think you're right. And what Kaneshima had done, at least this is a story I get from Mr. Blythe. I mean, I wasn't there. So
Right,
he said that he had the interview and he said, hey, I don't teach Americans. He said, well, that's why I want to do it. So they just talked more. He goes, okay, well, show me what you got. So he performed some katas and performed some weapons, and then he said, okay, I want you to go with this guy into this other room, and he's going to teach you our 5 Pinan katas. You
okay,
got 15 minutes. Come back out and show them to me. And so I'm like, holy crap, that was, So
right.
he went in there, and I guess they were close enough to the ones he already knew that he was able to do them. And so he came out and performed those 5 Pinan katas to the best of his, knowledge after 15 minutes of instruction.
Right.
And so Kaneshima said, okay, well, I'll let you know in a week, and well, he didn't say it personally because he doesn't
Right.
speak English, but he said, I'll let you know next week sometime. So he decided, he says, okay, I'll let you train. So he trained at the Hanbu dojo in uh, uh, Yanabaru, I believe is where it was. And at Kaneshima's house, he had a dojo in the back. Like a lot of those traditional old
Sure.
Okinawan houses had a little dojo attached to them, you know.
Well, people said, why in Isshinryu do we do a standing bow? And somebody asked Tatsuo Sensei one time, why do we do a standing bow? And Tatsuo goes, because the floor is dirty, because they were training in the backyard of his house.
Yeah,
And he's like, we're gonna kneel in the dirt. He goes, we don't kneel in the dirt, so we do. And for whatever reason, Isshinryu still does a standing bow. It just
right.
became that's the tradition within our school that we do a
Hmm.
standing bow, which I
Right,
appreciate because I'm not a big fan of sitting in Caesar anymore.
right.
So it makes me happy to do the standing
Mhm.
bow.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
So anyway, yeah.
so go ahead. No,
Okay.
no, go ahead.
Okay. So anyway, Bobby Joe thought that Tozan-ryu was seemed like a truer or cleaner, more realistic karate than some of the others he had tried out. After he left Kempo, he tried a couple other schools, tried Kendo, tried a couple things. So he wanted that full contact feel, but wanted to make sure that it was still true karate, and or at least what he thought true karate was. And so he had he realized that Shindokan, well, another word for Tozan-ryu is Shindokan, which is the name of the dojo,
Okay.
um, was very, very lean. There were no extraneous movements to look fancy. Everything had a purpose. Every movement was a technique that meant something. It wasn't just, well, this is a precursor move to get into this move, or this is a fancy fighting posture or something. Every single kata movement was a self-defense technique. There was nothing extraneous and nothing there for show. And it was very clean and just straight to the point. Okay.
Did they use the kendo armor for the full contact?
Yes, it was. Well, it's the karate bogu that
Right. Right.
was invented in the 30s, but it was a kendo-like headgear
Right.
and a chest protector, and they didn't use gloves back in his day, but
Right.
they used those. They were kind of like kendo gloves.
Right.
And then later on, they started using those Bruce Lee gloves, the big
Right.
fat ones that he used to
Right.
wear, and stuff like that.
Well, it's
And that's
interesting because
yeah.
Tatsuo also experimented with that in
Yes, I
Isshinryu.
remember. Yeah,
And
well,
I
he
know
was
I've
Tatsuo was a student of Motobu as well.
right, right.
So, so they, they did full contact. So
Yes, it was
they
interesting.
didn't mess around.
A lot of the arts back then were experimenting with it,
Yes.
you know?
Hmm. Yeah, I think I can't remember who the Kenwa Mabuni, I think, is the one that invented the kendo
I think you're
Gogo.
probably right. Yeah, because there
Gogo.
are photos of him and Tyrish and Ken
Yes.
in the actual Bogu, the protective gear.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, so anyway, so he studied under Kaneshima for several years, and then he was transferred back to the United States, and that's when I started learning from him.
Okay.
And I remember the very first night I was in the dojo, when he said, "Okay, come in." I had to buy a new gi, that sort of thing, because
Right.
I had grown like 6 inches over the last summer, so my gi was like up to my shin, up the middle of my shin and stuff. And although that was popular back in those days,
Right.
it felt kind of weird. So we were Bohan was one of the first dojos in this area to ever wear black uniforms, because if in Okinawa everything was white,
Right.
but in the United States black uniforms were just starting to come into popularity, and mostly with the tough dojos, the ones who are the bad karate
Well,
people.
it's funny. It's
Yeah,
the same thing in football, right?
yeah,
The Raiders are silver and black, and their reputation is being like this fierce football team,
yeah,
right? And and now a lot of the teams have different uniforms, and they always have at least one that's a black
right,
color, right?
right,
It's just funny how that color. I mean, look, I got black geese here from
yeah,
Matayoshi Kobudo hanging here,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
yeah, it's just interesting, right?
Yeah, so anyway, the very first night in the dojo, we've got maybe 30 people all lined up. Everybody's brand new. There was a couple of guys from my old dojo under Bohan who had started there a few weeks before me. And you know, so Sensei's up in the class and he's okay, we're going to do so many of this, so many of that, so many of this, so many of that. And then so that way everybody knew what we were going to do. And then he goes, "Okay, who wants to fight tonight?" Not who would like to spar. Would anybody
Right,
like to
right,
try sparring or
right,
anything like that? There was no free sparring. It
right,
was who wants to fight. And one of the guys in the front row who'd been in my former school, he was in his mid 30s, and for some reason he didn't like me. And I was only 14 at the time when I went under Mr. Blythe, but for some reason he didn't like me. And he said, "I want to fight Zingg." Bobby Joe was like, "He's only 14." He goes, "Oh, I want to fight him." "Oh, okay. Hey, Zingg. Yes, sir. You want to fight tonight?" Okay. I had no idea what I was getting myself
right,
into. And he goes, "Okay, great. Got to fight tonight." So we went through class, and I felt like a baby gazelle who was just born. I mean, or a baby giraffe who was just, I couldn't walk and chew gum at the same time, because the drills I had learned under Isshinryu that I was very good at, and I had gotten to be a green belt in Isshinryu, and I'd won tournaments and stuff like that. I was very good in Isshinryu. I couldn't walk and chew gum at the same time doing these new drills because they were different.
right.
Okay. And I'd never done anything different. I'd only done Isshinryu. So I was like, my self-esteem at the beginning of the class was really high. It was down at the bottom at the end of class. And I was like, man, I don't know anything. So when it came time to fight, he goes, "Okay, Zing, come on up here. Have you ever done this before?" I said, "No, sir. I've never, I've done free sparring, but I've never done full contact." He goes, "Well, you got to remember, you got to really hit hard. You can't just hit and pull back. You've got to go full force. I said, okay, Well, at the time, he was still moving from Okinawa, so a lot of his stuff had not arrived yet. So we had the bogu, but we didn't have the gloves. And he
Okay.
only had one set of gloves. And he said, and the other guy had like burns on his hand or something from he was an electrician, had burned
Okay.
himself. And so he got to wear the gloves. And so he said, well, Zing, we don't have gloves for you. So don't use your fist on the head plate because it's metal
It's
bars.
steel. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He
Yeah.
said, don't do that. So he said, don't kick the metal plate. Don't use roundhouse kicks with your instep. If you're going to do a roundhouse kick, use the ball of the foot. Don't use your instep because on the metal plate, you'll hurt yourself. And I'm like, yes, sir. No problem. Yes, sir. So we bow in, they tie the headgear on and everything. And we bow in. And as soon as he says fight, this guy jumps across and just boom, hits me with the right cross across the face. It spins the headgear on my face sideways. So I'm looking out the ear hole. Okay. And we're just fighting and I'm just surviving back and
Right.
forth. And, we fight for about 15 seconds and the headgear sideways on my face. And finally he's laughing his head off and he stops the fight. And he goes, who tied this for him? And he put it back on and tied it correctly. And by this time, my heart rate's like 200 beats a minute
Right.
or a second. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready now. Okay,
Right.
like Mike Tyson said, best laid plans, until
So you
somebody
get
hits you in
punched
the
in the
face.
face. Right.
And so we got there and we start fighting, and I guess it kicked in, so we're fighting, and all of a sudden I go boom, and I hit the headgear with my right hand, ow, and boom with my left hand. All the while he's yelling, "Don't hit the
Hit the
face plate
face.
with your
Your
hands."
fist. Right.
Yes, sir. Boom.
Ooh.
Yes, sir. Boom. And so then I jump back a little bit and I do a roundhouse kick and just whop this guy right upside the head. Ow, God dog it, and then switch feet, boom, ow, 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 that hit with. So we fought for like 2 minutes or so. It wasn't. I felt like
Felt
forever.
like right.
Yeah, but it was only 2 or 3 minutes. And finally, I felt like I was really. I mean, first he was kicking the crap out of me because he was older.
Right.
He was kind of big
He's stronger.
and
Right. Sure.
yeah, and experienced,
Yeah.
and so then I started really kind of feeling like I was getting it. And so I started getting the better of him and boom, 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 stuff like that. And so finally, and Bobby Joe, of course, laughing his ass off the entire time. And so he finally stops this, says, okay, all right. So we bow to each other. And at the time, I didn't understand what was going on. But after we bow and shook hands, he looks at the other guy and says, did you get what you wanted? And the guy goes, yeah. It goes, okay, I don't want to hear any more of it. Okay. And I'm like, it went completely
Right.
over my head. It wasn't until I reminisced years later that he had evidently told Bobby Joe that there was some issue between the two of us that I was oblivious of,
Okay.
that he wanted kind of revenge for.
Okay.
And so Bobby Joe's like, okay, did you get what you wanted? Yeah, okay, fine. I don't want to hear any more about it. Okay. And the guy quit about 2 weeks later. So it wasn't any big deal. Never lasted anywhere.
So, so
And but let me finish.
Okay.
So after the headgear was off and everything like that, I looked at my hands. All the knuckles were busted open on both of my hands. I was bleeding profusely off my fingers. The insteps of my feet were all tore up from the headgear. I was bleeding on my feet. I had bitten my lip, and the headgear, when it went across my face, kind of cut across my nose a little bit, and had a little abrasion on my cheek or whatever. But boy, was I pumped.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
man, I was pumped.
Well.
Well, now for the last 3 years, my mother had never come to one of my classes at Bohan's place. Guess which class she decided to come and watch?
She picked that one.
Yes, and she was there watching me, and she was at the door going, "Oh my, oh my." Now, my mother was a staff sergeant in the United States
Right.
Marine Corps
She's no
during World War II.
wallflower. She's no
Yeah,
wallflower.
she
Right.
was not a tough. She was a tough lady,
Right.
and she retired in May of in 1950 after after she married my dad, because my dad was a sergeant major in the Marine
Right.
Corps. And so anyway, she's back there going, "Oh my, oh my," So, and she asked me, she says, "Is this what you want?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She goes, "All right, if this is what you want, you can have it." And I studied with Mr. Blythe up until 1984, when he retired and moved away and
Okay.
turned the school over to somebody else, and I moved up to West Virginia. and from Northern Virginia, where we were right outside of Quantico, and kind of stayed in touch with him over the years, but really don't have much, I haven't seen him in
Right.
years, but it's what he taught me about being a self-sufficient martial artist who was fully confident in their capabilities. He taught me to be confident in what I could do, but to know what I couldn't do. So he said, you walk around town like you own the place because you have that confidence. But realize if you get into a situation that no, this is not where I need to
Right.
be, feel free to to walk away. You don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to fight. You don't have to go out and start fights. I don't want to hear anybody starting fights. But if somebody starts something with you, you finish it.
Right.
Okay. And so, but anyway, so that's what. So I studied with him, and
So,
I still teach his style, the Tozan-ryu Karate.
right.
After I left him, I was kind of instructorless, because he encouraged me before he retired. He encouraged me to go out and open up my own school. And I was getting ready to move up to West Virginia or considering it. My wife had moved, had accepted a job up here teaching, and she was a math teacher. And her parents lived up here or had retired up here. And it was one of those things. Well, like, oh, gee, I want to, what do I want to do? And I had been working as a professional bodyguard for several years, and I had had an opportunity to perhaps go to Saudi Arabia and be a security personnel for the oil fields up there, and it paid a lot of money and all that sort of stuff. And
Right.
I was really considering, do I want to do that? I'd been working as a bodyguard around DC, and I was making good money doing that. And going to West Virginia was going to be a big pay cut. So
Right.
I was like, well, do I want to do it? So he says, hey, open up your own dojo. So so that's what I did. I came up here to West Virginia in May of 1984, and kind of got a job at the local casino as a bartender. It was a horse racetrack at the time. They hadn't yet had the casino. There's a big casino up here now, and I was a bartender, and I started bartending in different clubs. And then in November or October of that year, I actually started teaching classes at the local community center.
Okay.
And after about 3 months there, I had enough students that I felt warranted me opening up a commercial school.
Right.
So I found a place that was just up the street from where I was. That was an old Civil War era warehouse that had been converted into businesses. And I had like the main business in the middle. And initially it was like a 22 by 22-foot square room with an office and two bathrooms, And the owner of the building told me that I could actually expand out into the warehouse, and that they had a whole bunch of surplus building material that they had salvaged from different jobs that he worked on in back for storage. And he says, hey, you can use any of that stuff. You could build it however you want. So after class, the students and I would go out in the back and we'd sort lumber and pull nails. And I was so poor that I had the kids take hammers and straighten all the nails that we pulled out because I couldn't afford to go buy a box
Buy
of nails,
nails.
a
Right.
big, huge
Right.
box of nails.
Right.
And so we just we framed out, a 3,000 square foot dojo. And I was starting to do well enough where I bought out a karate school that went out of business and bought all their stuff.
Okay.
And then when my sensei retired, he gave me a lot of his stuff.
Okay.
And so I had lots of cool stuff. I mean, I had a dozen sets of that bogu. I had all sorts of weapons and mirrors,
Right.
and I had tons of stuff. And we opened up. Well, I moved into that facility in January of '85. July 1st of '85, we moved into the back room. Okay. And we turned the front area into a big lobby.
Right.
And then exactly 1 year later, the little restaurant next door to me caught on fire and burned everything down. And I lost everything. All my gis, all my certificates, all the weapons, all the paraphernalia that I had, all my certificates, everything was gone. And normally, what would happen is I worked as a bouncer in a club. So that was a Sunday night. It happened on a Sunday night. I was working, and it was slow. And the manager said, "Hey, why don't you take off? There's nobody here. We don't need anybody." So I normally it was about midnight, 1 o'clock, and I would have typically just gone home. But this time I was like, "Oh, I got an 8 o'clock class in the morning. Man, I'll just go to the karate school and sleep on my little cot in the bedroom in my office." Well, I was going to go do that, and then I remembered my wife was out of town with her high school, one of her high school drama team. She was a drama coach as well as
Okay.
math teacher, and so they were away at a conference or something. So she had reminded me that I had to feed the cat. I'm like, "Oh God, I'm gonna go all the way home feed the cat." So I went all the way up because I live up on the mountain outside of town. So it took me a while to get up there. I got home, fed the damn cat, and so I just went to bed. Hour later, I get a call from the dispatcher that my karate school's on fire.
Right.
And I'm like, "Holy shit, man." So I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe the restaurant's on fire a little bit and I get a little smoke damage, maybe a little
Right.
water damage. Maybe it's okay. It's cool. So I get down there and I get outside of town and I can see the flames over the trees and the courthouse building
Right.
outside
So
of town. I
you
can
you knew
see the flames.
you knew then that
Yeah, it was a little
you
bit more than just a
yeah,
little smoke
yeah,
damage. And when I got to the dojo, I'm in awe. I mean, the flames were 200 feet in the air.
right,
The building itself had been an old warehouse, and
right,
so everything was construction of huge timbers and stuff
right,
like that. So it just went up like a box of
right.
matches, and I'm just like, oh my
Well,
goodness.
it's interesting. I had similar. I didn't have it happen that bad, luckily, but I did the same kind of thing you did, which was, and I recommend people ask me all the time, well, I'd like to start teaching my own class or I'd like to open my own dojo. And I tell them all the time, well, I think you should find a community center or maybe a dance school and start up there and then build it up. And then when you have built it up, then if you want to go the more professional route, rent your own storefront, now you have at least a base to do that. And I was in Portland, Oregon, teaching a seminar when my student's wife came over to me and said, "Call Lisa." And I'm thinking right away, "Oh my God, my wife! Call your wife." I'm thinking, "Oh, what happened?" And she goes, "Listen, there was a fire next door to the dojo." And she goes, "Everything's okay. The dojo wasn't touched. Everything's good. But they broke in through your steel diamond plate security door in the back. So the fire department just literally bent it to get in there."
Uh,
So they said to me, "Well, so we had a guy come. He straightened it out to where he could do it, and he's coming this week to replace it." I said, "Fine." So they would just check on me to make sure what they did was okay. But I had a similar where obviously yours went the worst it could possibly be.
right.
I dodged a bullet, but but obviously you recovered at some point.
Well, I I took about a week to mourn because I mean I got down to the dojo about
Oh, it's a
at
disaster.
2 o'clock that morning and
Yeah,
some fire.
I'd have been crushed, believe
So
me.
I stood there. I was standing in front of the flames, watching the firemen work, and they had all these fire engines there. And I'm standing on the sidewalk, 50 feet away,
Right,
100 feet away, whatever. And I'm looking at my life go up in flames,
right,
right?
right.
So I start to tear up a little bit. And I was like, "Oh man." And then I realized, hey, karate's in my heart. That's just stuff.
Right.
That's not karate.
Right.
That's
And
just stuff.
not to
Karate's
mention,
here.
not to mention that you could have been sleeping in there.
Exactly.
And
I could have
maybe
been,
it could have been much, much worse.
exactly. I also had that feeling because, I mean, the firemen, when they came, the fire inspector came and told me that it had probably been going for, it had been started for a while. It had been smoldering a little
Right.
bit. And then once it broke through something and got
Right.
oxygen, it got a big backdraft
Yeah.
because when they investigated it, my building backed up to a railroad and the whole back of the building had blown out onto the railroad. I mean, with
Mm.
like an explosion.
Right.
Okay. So what they're thinking was that the restaurant had smoldered a while. They left a burner on or
Right.
something,
Whatever they did. Right.
and it smoldered and smoldered and smoldered. And finally, when it broke through and got oxygen, it just
Right.
and just went up like an explosion. So had I gotten there and opened up the front door, that would have been
Right.
the
Right.
backdraft type of thing, and I could have been killed there.
So the big guy
So
was looking out for you,
exactly,
and
exactly.
the cat,
Yeah,
in a
I was very
roundabout way,
nice. I
saved
was
your
very
life.
nice to the cat after that. Yeah. So anyway, I really I was standing there and I stood there until a fireman left. And they had one, everything just collapsed into the basement. It was a 2-story building,
Okay.
and it just collapsed into the basement. And I stood there and just kind of was like, looking at the smoldering wreckage for an entire week.
Mhm.
I stood there all day up until about 3 or 4 in the afternoon, kind of just going, and my wife finally came and got me and forced me to come home. And so the next morning I got up, I went to the dojo and stood there and just kind of stood in front of the building and kind of, so I think that week of mourning that I did kind of was very cathartic, got it out of
Right.
my system. And then the next Monday, I opened up back at the same community center
Okay.
with the core group of people that came back with me. Some
Right.
people just never came back, but
Right.
uh, I had a core group of people come back with me, and I was there for about 6 months. And then one of my students was a Methodist pastor, and he told me that a Baptist church that was just a few blocks away had moved to a larger facility, and their old building was for sale. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I drove by it and went, oh, that's a nice place. It's a nice big
Right.
rectangular building.
Right.
So we talked. My father-in-law wanted to diversify some of his investments since he'd been retired. So he wanted to invest in some real estate. So we talked to a real estate agent. We looked at it, and I fell in love. The first time I walked in, a big rectangular building. I mean, it
Right.
was
Perfect.
no everything. And so he bought the building. We had a minor remodeling done. They replaced the windows and split the electric, and the upstairs became an apartment. And my father-in-law rented that out so he could recoup his money, and
Right.
I rented the bottom from him. And having your father-in-law as your landlord is kind of tough.
I was just
Okay,
gonna
but
say that could be
anyway,
difficult.
yeah. So I was there, and it went through a lot of iterations. At first, it was just a very blank slate. There was nothing
Right.
on the walls. The floor was the same carpet the church had used for 20 years. So where the pews was bright red carpet, and where
Okay.
people had put their feet was black because they'd
Okay.
worn
Right. Right.
all the color off. Kind of reminded me. We always used to joke it was like the Shaolin Temple where the monks had worn grooves into
In
the
the
stone
stone.
floors.
Right.
That's why we've done Nahachi for so many years,
Right.
that the black things. So and several years later, we replaced the carpet when I finally had some money. And about 10 years ago, I put in a sprung wooden floor, where I bought a dance floor from a ballet school that went out of business. That was about the same size as my dojo. And we spent a week over Christmas uh, installing this bouncy floor
Right.
with really nice bamboo flooring and stuff,
Right.
click flooring.
Right.
And I also have full tatami mats over the floor too. So
Okay.
I have the option of, right now I mostly just stay on the tatami mats, but I can take them up if we want to be on the
Right.
wooden floor.
Right.
Okay. And so it's a real nice setup. And of course, over the years, I replenished my
Yeah.
stock
Right.
kings.
Right.
And so
Well,
people have
e-
said that it reminds them of walking into a cave of weapons,
right.
because
Well, even out here with me, once I moved out here, I left a lot of my stuff still in New York. And then, I slowly would be each time I went back and forth to do a seminar or whatever, I'd bring some more stuff back with me. But then there was also some stuff I had to just replace. I got out
Mhm.
here. I
Yep.
had to, and like I bought all mats out here that I can cover the whole floor if I want to do stuff involving where I need a softer surface.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you restart, you're gonna have to reinvest and get some things. And
Well,
when you have a fire where you lose everything, yeah, you're gonna have to at some point
yeah.
replace
Well,
everything.
I mean, I was fortunate. Bobby Joe was able to reissue all my old certificates, so I've got copies,
Okay, great.
reissued copies of my certificates. He just wrote up new ones, and so that was in '86. And so it wasn't long after that I started in my Kempo and Jiu-Jitsu style that I currently teach. Um, I had met a Kempo guy uh, at a tournament, and I had, just briefly, hi, how are you? And I'd been invited to a seminar that he was giving, because one of my Isshinryu karate friends called me up and said, "Hey, I'm opening up a dojo in a nearby town. I'm going to have this guy come in and do a seminar on Kempo and Jiu-Jitsu. Would you be interested in coming?" I'm like, I'm okay with my karate. I don't need anything new. He goes, "Well, it'd be nice if you would come to help support the fact that I've opened up my dojo." I said, "All right, not a problem. I'll be there. I'll bring some students." So I went to the seminar, and it was this guy I had met at this tournament. And at first, when they said he was a Kempo guy, I didn't know if they were saying Kenpo or Kempo, because sometimes,
Right.
it's different depending on who you're talking to. And I thought he had been an Ed Parker type of guy, but he
Okay.
wasn't. He was more of a Shorinji Kempo guy.
Okay.
And so we did a seminar, and we were doing mostly jujitsu. So I knew how to do some rolls and falls, but not really well. And so he showed us how to do rolls and falls real well. And I'm like, "Oh wow, that's a lot easier than I was doing it before." And we started doing all sorts of techniques, off of punches and grabs and chokes and all sorts of stuff. And it was kind of fun. It was a little painful, but it was kind of
Right.
fun. It was very stand up, no Brazilian
Right.
stuff. It was all stand up. And he did a move that was directly out of one of my Pinon 5. And I was like, "That's X
Right.
move out of Pinon 5." And he looked at me and said, "Well, I don't know Pinon 5. So, okay. Okay." And so I said, "No, no, no. This is the move from the kata. And that's exactly what you're doing." He goes, "Oh, well, these moves are kind of universal." So, and then it just kind of hit me. It just really stuck with me. So a few minutes later, we're doing a different technique, and it was right out of Pinon Shodan. And I'm like, "Oh, that's one of those moves right out of Pinon Shodan." And he goes, "Well, they're all kind of interrelated. Karate, Kempo, Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, they all kind of blend together at some point. And even though one emphasizes something more, like Judo emphasizes throws and stuff like that, karate emphasizes kicks and punches, they all have that inside. And so on my way back, I started thinking about it, and I started applying those principles that he was talking about how all the different moves kind of are interrelated. And on my 2-hour drive back to my dojo, my I say that my technique base, or my little bag of tricks, just quadrupled, because I was starting applying all these different techniques to all the different kata moves that I knew. And I knew a lot of bunkai, and we had done a lot of bunkai, but it just made so much more sense. Oh my God,
Yeah, well, it took you
it,
outside of the box.
yeah.
Now you're
And
out. Now you're outside the box. Right.
right. So anyway, when he had a dojo in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And so I would travel down to his dojo for seminars whenever he had a seminar, or he brought one of his senseis up from North Carolina or wherever they were living. And so I was like attending his stuff like every month. Every time he had something, I was there. I was there. I was there. So finally, I met his instructor. His instructor was a guy named Dr. Ron Cherry. He's a doctor of pharmacy. So he's got a legitimate PhD
Right.
doctor. He's a legitimate doctor.
Right.
And he had been in the military, and studied with a lot of different people. Like many people of our age, when martial arts was not very popular, you kind of studied with whomever was close. Okay. So one, for a while, depending on how long the person was there, it might be a Japanese Shotokan guy for 2 years, and then
Right.
he moves away, and then it's a Taekwondo guy.
Right.
Well, then it's a Hapkido guy, and then it's a Judo guy, and then so he had studied a whole bunch of different stuff over the years, and was high ranking several different arts, both Korean and Japanese. Hapkido, Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, that sort of stuff. And he was just so willing to share his knowledge. I had been to seminars by other instructors, very prominent instructors, and really liked what they're doing, but they were always holding back. They didn't want to show
Right.
me any really cool stuff
Right.
unless I joined their organization. "Oh, do you want to join my organization? Well, I will show you the really cool stuff if
Right.
you do that." And I'm like, I don't really want to do that.
Right.
And I just want somebody to teach me. And so, but Dr. Cherry was very, very open about that. And he says, "Oh, hey, let's do something I haven't done in 20 years. Let me teach you this technique I learned 20 years ago. I haven't taught to anybody else since. Let's do this." And we just beat the crap out of each other for like 8 hours, and we started 8 in the morning, take a little bit of a lunch break. We'd finish at 5. We'd go have some dinner. We'd come back for a couple more hours after dinner. And it was just wonderful. It was like, oh God, I feel like I'm, rejuvenated again. And so I kept going. Every time he would come up, Charles Stanley was the guy who owned the dojo. And every time Charles would bring one of these guys up, it was great. And finally, after about a year, they said, "Hey, Rob, you've been coming to all these seminars and stuff. Why don't you just join our organization?" I'm like, "Well, okay, I can do that." And so I joined initially as a Kobudo and a Jiu-Jitsu affiliate. It's
Okay.
just kind of
Right.
a partner. I wasn't a full dojo.
Right.
I just wanted to learn that group because I was happy with my karate.
Right.
I didn't feel I needed Kempo or anything. And so another 6 months or so go by, and I'm going to all these different seminars and stuff. And finally, I said, "Hey, you're here all the time. Why don't you just join?" He goes,
Right.
I can do that."
Right.
And they go, "Well, yeah." I said, "Well, I don't have to give up my karate style." No, no, you can
Right.
teach karate, you can teach Kempo. As long as you teach Kempo, and call yourself a Kempo school, you're fine. And he does a Shorinji style Kempo.
Right.
It's called Torakenryu, Tiger Fist Way.
Right.
And his sensei was Albert Church, who
Okay.
was a real prominent guy in like South Carolina, the Southeast.
Hmm.
He had studied in Japan and Korea and was the inheritor of a style from Japan. Okay. And one of the first guys to actually inherit a style, okay, from a Japanese Korean teacher. And he taught, I think he was out of Charleston, South Carolina,
Okay.
and taught in that area. And Dr. Cherry was his like number 2 guy.
Okay.
And his main examiner, he would go to all the different dojos and do examinations and stuff. Well, when Albert Church died suddenly, just out of the blue, just 55
Right.
years old, died. Um, Dr. Cherry was supposed to be the guy to take over. Well, his widow uh, wanted to be the person to take over. Well, she didn't do martial arts, and she just wanted to be the person. And he's like,
Right.
"Well, you really don't, know how to do." And she's, "Oh, I insist." So he could tell there was going to be some issues there. So he goes, "Well, okay, fine. You go ahead and take the style, and you teach, or you get somebody to teach or whatever." And so he left and started his own organization, the American Kempo-Karate Association, and he just changed the name, taught the
Right.
same stuff, just
Right.
changed the name. And because under Albert Church, I believe it was called uh, oh shoot, what was it called? Tetsukenryu,
Well,
Tiger Iron Fist.
what's interesting, the one thing in martial arts that is guaranteed, is when a big kahuna dies, the transition never goes smooth.
Right.
There's always splintering, there's this, there's that, there's infighting.
Yeah.
It's like I've never not seen it. I've
Yeah.
never not seen it.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing about human nature.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is that when Dr. Cherry was under uh, Albert Church, Albert Church had 2 other guys who were supposed to be his number 2 to take over, but they had either left or there was some issue or something
Right.
like that. And that's why Dr. Cherry came in, and he was like the number 2 for several years. Well, after he passed away and after several years of doing the American Kempo-Karate Association, we kind of got in touch with those guys, you know, over time and became friends.
Okay.
So, so Dr. Cherry, became friends with these guys. And when we have a seminar, they come and visit and teach and stuff like that. So it's nice that there are, those things have kind of healed. Okay. Within, even after his passing, I never got a chance to meet him. But he sounds like a real interesting guy. Um,
What's
but
your Kobudo background? So where
okay,
does the Ko what
Kobudo,
which Kobudo do you study?
I teach both.
Oh,
I teach the Tozan-ryu Kobudo, which
okay.
has also some Okinawan Kempo Kobudo with it
Okay.
from Nakamura Sensei.
Okay.
So a couple of those katas. Then I teach the Kobudo of the American Kempo-Karate Association, they have
Okay.
a very strong Kobudo system.
Okay.
Mostly they use short stick, Bo, Joe, Hanbo, and a lot of knife defenses,
Okay.
Tanto Jutsu.
Okay.
At the time, they were also teaching a sword style, a variation of Mugaru that
Okay.
was taught by Kunibaru. Okay,
Okay.
it was like his family style, but it was a variation of Mugaru.
Okay.
And then, but they have since stopped that, are teaching a different style that I introduced to them.
Okay.
Okay, what I'll get to in a bit. Um, but lot of nunchaku. Dr. Cherry is a real
Okay.
proponent of nunchaku, and he has a lot of that. And so that's there, but plus the Okinawan stuff, the Bo side, nunchaku kama, tumfa,
Right.
stuff like that. And plus, I've also gone to a lot of seminars given by a really good friend of mine, um, and who studied under Nakazato,
Okay.
okay, and Shigeru Nakazato. And so a lot of the techniques some of the katas I teach come from them. And then I have a couple of katas I teach came from a guy named John Farrell, who was an Isshinryu guy,
Okay.
who was also a Kyokushin guy,
Okay.
but he learned several Joe katas and stuff in Okinawa that he taught us at a seminar. And I teach those two katas as part of my curriculum. Now, I teach the ones that I think are significant, either because of the style that they come from, the way they hold the bow, and stuff like that. So everybody holds the bow differently. Some people hold the bow flat against the forearm when they thrust. Others hold it on the outside of the arm. Others kind of tuck it under their arm. There's a lot of different ways to hold it, and they're all legitimate ways,
Right.
but they all have their idea on why they hold
Right.
their bow that way. So when I would go to a seminar, I'd learn a form. Well, that's pretty cool. I like that form. I'll put it in my curriculum. And I tell my students, so this comes from this style, and this comes from that style, and this one's one of our styles, okay, and sort of stuff. And the students seem to appreciate that I'm open to accepting things from other people, okay. And I like to do it because I think I'm helping preserve that particular style, outside of their
So
own
even
lineage
even
and curriculum.
even myself, obviously, I learned Isshinryu Kobudo first, right, which comes from the Taira Shinken lineage, right?
Right.
And Isshinryu, they put it under the arm, right? And you'll see
Right.
some people do it up into the armpit,
Oh yeah, that's bad
that's
news.
totally incorrect. But
Yeah.
anyway, and then I began studying Mariyoshi Kobudo, which I'm doing for a very long time now too. And they do outside the arm.
Right.
Um, and again, I think of it as tomato, tomato, right?
Right.
But when I do Isshinryu, the bow's under my arm. When I do Mariyoshi, it's on the outside of my arm.
Yeah,
Um,
I had the opportunity to try to do some Mariyoshi for a while at a seminar, and I
okay.
really liked it.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
mean,
I
I
like
love
the
it. It's a
fact
lot
that
of
they have
fun.
all these
Yeah,
different
yeah,
weapons, but I
yeah.
never really got a chance to do
Yeah.
it. So,
And
yeah,
look, I liked the seminar Walt Young did. I mean, I had a very good time at that seminar. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought, again, a system that's not well known, even on Okinawa, it's not that
right.
well known, so to experience even a little bit of it, was kind of cool.
Well, that's
Um,
like Tozan-ryu. There's
yeah,
only one school in Tozan-ryu in
right,
Okinawa. There's the main guy who took over from Kaneshima when he passed
right,
away. Um, he runs a dojo at a community center,
right,
and then the guy that I actually study from, if I go to Okinawa, has a dojo in his home that he
right,
has some of the local kids in his community come to.
right.
And that I mean, that's a really cool story about me going to Okinawa to try and find these guys, because all I'd ever heard were the stories that Bobby Joe had told about training in Nago under Nakamura, and all the different military bases that he would train on, because every military base had a karate club or
Right.
something, and he would train with these guys, and he would train here, train there. And then, but when he got under Kaneshima, he would study at his house, okay, at this little traditional Okinawan house. And so all I heard was stories like that. And one of the other black belts in our group um, was a Marine, and he was transferred to Okinawa for a year, and he was able to get in contact with Kaneshima and ask permission to train because of Bobby Joe. And So rather than accept him in the dojo because he's only going to be there for a year,
Right.
he actually had him study under one of the other black belts who spoke English.
Okay.
Okay, so they became real good friends, and he would come to the Hanbu dojo and train, but he wasn't under Kaneshima directly,
Right.
even though Kaneshima was sitting there, going, okay, get your heels out, that sort
Right.
of thing. And so uh, when I had the opportunity to go to Okinawa for the very first time, I went with my really good friend, Eb Welch, who was a student of Nakazato, who's the one I learned the Nakazato katas from. Uh, the idea was that he and I were going to go, and he was going to have Sensei Nakazato help find Kaneshima for me, because all I knew was his name is Shinsuke Kaneshima. He lives in Yonnabaru. That's all I knew.
Right.
Knew a couple other names from the dojo, had a few photographs, but that's all I had. So I had no addresses or nothing. So we got there, and Nakazato, nice guy, real personal and stuff, but wasn't really interested in helping me unless I joined his organization.
Right.
Okay. And the all he had to say was Kaneshima die. Okay,
Right.
and that's all he had to say because he had passed away.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, well, do you know where his dojo is? I can maybe talk to whoever took over for him. No, Nakazato, Kaneshima died. So, and then we had a typhoon come through, so that kind of knocked us out for a few days, and we just never got a chance to go look for my dojo, for the home
Right.
dojo. So finally, we were supposed to leave on a Sunday. So Friday, or no, Saturday, I decide, damn it, I'm going to go find these people come hell or high water. If they tell me to go jump in the lake and they won't teach me, fine. At least I made the effort to do it. Because if
Right.
I don't, I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life. This is the first time I've ever come to Okinawa. I was 40 years old. I'm thinking, I should have done this 20 years ago. But now that I'm here, I want to,
Right.
I want to get it right. So I got up really early in the morning, got my backpack with my gi and all that sort of stuff, and got a taxi and told the guy, take me to Yonnabaru police station. Oh, are you in trouble? No, no, no. Just take me to the damn police station. So he drives me over. It wasn't that very far from where we were.
Right.
And I was surprised how close it was. So I walk into the police station, lady greets me, they're very polite. I go, hi, I'm an American. Does anybody speak English? And the lady goes, and so she goes and she gets a young police officer who had studied in the United States while he was in college, and his English was really good. So he brought him over, and I introduced myself. I told him who I was, why I was there. I'm trying to find my karate school, the Hanbu karate school. I don't know any information other than the guy's name and that he lives in Yonnabaru and a little bit of historical fact. I have some photographs. So he chatted, he kind of picked my brain. He went and made a bunch of phone calls, and I'm like, oh, I don't know. Nobody just needs to know this guy. I said, well, he's really old. I mean, he's probably passed away already. And they said, well, let me. So about for like 4 hours, I'm there in the police station. He's gone back. He's making phone calls, making phone calls. Nobody seems to know this guy. So I said, well, it's really odd that nobody seems to know him. I mean, he used to be mayor of Shuri, and he was very famous acupressure doctor,
Right.
and that sort of thing. And I said he was really famous. He's supposed to be really well known. And so I said, isn't there like an old retired police official that might have remembered him from years ago? And the guy, he goes, oh, I have one guy. Let me check. So he's been super polite, super friendly the entire time. He goes in the office, comes back about 10 minutes later. His eyes are about this big around. And he goes, oh, now I know who you're trying to find. Oh, very famous, very well known, very respected, oh, and you're his student? I said, no, no, my sensei was his student.
Right.
I've come to see. He goes, yes, he passed away a few years ago, but we contacted his widow, but his widow's a little have dementia, so she
Right.
didn't know much. So we contacted his son, and we found out all the information you need to know. I said, oh, well, that's very nice. Could you write down the address and I'll take a taxi over? And he goes, no, 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 no. We take. I'm like, what? He goes, okay, in the police car. So they get me in the police car, lights and sirens, going down the road. And they drive about 5 minutes, and they pull up in front of the guy's house. And this is the guy who has the dojo in his home.
Right.
And He's like the number two guy, and his son, whom they had communicated with, is standing out front at attention. His
Right.
college age son, and so they pull up. Guy opens the door for me. I walk out like I'm a celebrity, and they bow very closely. Everybody shakes hands, and nobody speaks English except for the
Right.
one police officer. So he says, "Okay, we're going to go." He's going to take you in. His father's going to come home from work. His father was a prison official. Okay,
Okay.
and so he said he'll come by and greet you and stuff. So guy takes me into his house, and very traditional Okinawan, modern Okinawan house, but they have an American room that has shag carpet and Western furniture and all sorts of stuff.
Right.
Wagon wheel from the ceiling.
Right.
That's it. And so he takes me in. He turns on the sumo championships and brings me a Coca-Cola. And so we're standing there talking while trying to communicate, and all
Right.
he knows is Coca-Cola and blue jeans, and I don't know anything. And so he goes, "Oh, wait, wait." So he runs and he gets a photo album, and he comes out and he points to some photographs of my friend Willie, who had been there
Right.
earlier, and some other karate guys. I went, "Oh, oh." So I took my photograph, I flipped it, and I had the same photograph. Okay. And he goes, "Oh, okay." So we had the same photograph.
Right.
And so I would flip it through and I'd show him my sensei, Bobby Joe, and he would show me so we had the same photograph. So evidently Willie, who had access to Bobby Joe's photographs, was able to copy them and give them photographs that they had already had. They had photographs, and then he gave them new photographs, plus they took more photographs. So Willie was a photographer for the Marine Corps, so that was his
Okay.
job. So he photographed everything. And so it was pretty cool. So I sat down and watched a sumo tournament for a couple hours until the father came home, who did not speak English. And they brought another one of the senseis over who did speak English, and he actually was the brother of Bobby Joe's instructor under Nakamura.
Okay.
Okay. The one that got
Right.
the introduction originally.
Right.
And his English was really good. So they sat me down, and they asked me questions for an hour, just boom, 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 boom. What katas do you know? What training did you do? How many times did you train? Are you still training? Just grilled me,
Right.
third degree for like an hour. Okay. So then they said, okay. So then they talked to each other for about 20 minutes, just to themselves. And I'm sitting on the edge of the chair, all excited. So they start grilling me some more and asking me more questions. And finally, after they talk some more to each other, they look at me and they go, "What do you want?" Very, very blunt,
Right.
"What do you want?" I said, "Well, my sensei's retired. Bobby Joe's retired. I have no contact with him. He lives 3,000 miles away. I want to make sure that my kata is correct, because I know that if I train by myself, I might put a little mistake in something, and pretty soon that little mistake becomes standard. So I want to make sure that my kata is correct according to the Okinawan tradition." Okay. And they said, "That's it?" I said, "Yep, that's it." So they talk again to each other for 20 minutes. I mean, really just talking,
Right.
deep conversation. And I'm just like, oh. So finally the guy says, "Well, it is obvious that you are very sincere, because you have flown all this way, didn't even know if you'd be able to find us or not, and didn't know what the problem, what would happen. And so it's obvious that you were very sincere." So I'm hearing "but," in there. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, you're a sincere,
Right.
but okay. And he went on and said a few more things and said, "We'd be happy to have you as a student." And I'm like,
Right.
"Oh!" And and those two guys cracked up. Evidently, they had been discussing this. Like he thinks that we're going to turn him down. We're going to
Right.
make him feel like, and they just played a joke on me.
Right.
So uh, the one guy had to go back to work for a little bit, and so the father, the guy who owned the dojo, or owned the house, he took me on a car tour of Southern Okinawa. Okay, couldn't speak English, but he said,
Right.
"Bobby Joe there, Bobby Joe there,"
Right.
and we just had a nice time, just driving around Southern Okinawa. And then finally he came back, and he stopped in town and talked to a little kid, and one of his kids, who was one of his students, because he taught kids in the community for
Right.
free. So he told the kid, I found out later, he says, "Let everybody know that we have a special guest from the United States who teaches Tozan-ryu, and have everybody come tonight." So the kid went off and everybody told everybody. So I asked when I got to the dojo, I asked him how many kids you usually have in a class. He said about 10. Well, about 30 kids show up. Okay, well, it's much too big, too many kids for the dojo that he has in his
Right.
house. So we all kind of go down and walk in a line down to the local elementary school, and we train in the dark under the street light in the playground. And we're doing katas, we're doing
Right.
stuff, and so he tells me just sit down and watch, okay, because these are just little kids. I
Right.
said, well, I can't do kata with them. I'll do kata with them. I don't mind. He goes, no, 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 you just sit down. I'm like, but I want to do kata, and they go, just sit down. So I watched the little kids, and these little kids were freaking good. I
Yeah.
mean, I was watching the kids. I'm like, man, they're better than me. They've got really sharp. They're tight.
Right.
You know. So we get back to the dojo. Everybody washes their feet off, and they walk upstairs. We all bow out, and everybody takes a picture with me and stuff. And so then we're kind of hanging out, a couple guys are standing outside smoking a cigarette, a couple of men are sitting inside stretching, and I'm like, this is pretty lax here. There's not a whole lot of, you know,
Right.
discipline. So finally, class is supposed to start at like 7, like 7:15. Everybody's still stretching
Yeah.
a little
It's
bit,
Okinawa time.
Exactly.
It's Okinawa
And
time.
and so then the sensei gets up and goes, up, and everybody just, and we bow in. And then we kind of hang for a second. So then he goes, okay, all right, let's do some punches. So we start doing some punches. And it's the same drills that I do in the United States, but
Right.
we're much more formal in the United States. Everything's
Right.
very
Right.
militaristic, da 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 da, very strong. One,
Right.
two,
Right.
three, four. And everybody here, okay, we'll do some. All right, okay, head punches now. Okay, going outside blocks. Okay. And then we stopped and we kind of just hung out for another minute or two. And I'm like, okay, well, so then he says the name of a kata. Well, everybody that knows that kata jumps out on the floor.
Right.
Well, when he gives the command, I tell you, everybody is doing this kata at 120%.
Right.
They are full blown, like their
Right.
life depended on it.
Right.
And we do it one time. Then we bow out and we kind of hang around for a few minutes. Okay,
Right.
just kind of, hey, how you doing? Yeah, how's it? Then he calls the name of the different kata. Higher, lower, intermediate, didn't matter. He just say the name of a kata. People jump out on the floor. Well, every single time he said a kata, I knew it, so I jump out on the floor. So they kind of looked at me sideways, and like, okay, and I would do the kata, and I to looking at me compared to them, I was doing it pretty close to what they were doing. Nothing really different. And every once in a while, they come by and they kind of turn my fist a little bit, or push my hand up, or push my hand
Right.
down. So I had to do something. So we just did that all night long for about 4 hours, and finally, at one point, he called the name of a form, and I didn't know it because one, I couldn't understand him,
Right.
and I said, "What kata is that?" And they said a name of it, so I don't know that one. Oh, you don't know that one? Oh, okay, all right, good. We got something you don't know.
Right.
And so they said, well, let me teach you. So they took me away and they taught me the kata, and it was a short one, so
Okay.
it was easy to remember, and
That always helps.
yeah, and so I was able to come back and and teach it, here, and I try to keep it up, so I teach it,
Right.
and so at the end of the night, I mean, of course, it's August. It's 110 degrees outside. It feels like it's
Right.
100% humidity.
Right.
We're on the second floor of his house, or the third floor of his house, actually, and all the windows are open because it's like windows on three sides,
Right.
house on the backside, and so we had a great breeze, but boy, God, it was humid, and and so I was like dying. I needed something to drink, and I didn't bring my own water. I
Right.
just didn't think of it, and there wasn't any water fountain or anything around, and I'm like, I'm dying. I'm like, and I finally asked Sensei. I said, Sensei, mizu, water, drink. He
Yeah.
goes, okay. So he goes, so he sends his son down to the local corner store, which happens to be operated by his wife,
Right.
and he brings me back this huge bottle of sport drink,
Right.
okay,
Like
which is
Pocari Sweat.
Bahari Sweat, right? It wasn't that brand, but it
Right. But
just
it's
said
like that. Right.
sport drink on it.
Right.
So I said, oh, okay. I thought maybe perhaps it was Gatorade or whatever. So I
Right.
opened it up. I took a big old swig. It tasted like Cairo syrup. It had the consistency of light corn syrup.
Right.
Okay. And I'm like, I'm choking this stuff down. I'm like, what in the heck are they giving me? And I thought it was Karo syrup.
Right.
Okay. And I'm like, and they go, oh, very good, good, strong muscles. I'm like, oh, okay. So, and I'm dying of thirst. So I'm trying to slug down this Karo syrup going, and I'm thinking every time I take a swallow, it's got to be better. And it's not. Okay. So finally, at the end of class, I kind of put this thing away. Uh, we had finished training. We bowed out, and Sensei says to me, he goes, "You drink beer?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, I drink beer occasionally. I'm not a big drinker." And he goes, "Okay." So he goes downstairs. He has his son come up and bring me a little pony bottle of Miller Lite. Okay, and I'm like, "You want me to drink beer in the dojo?" Okay, I'm like,
Yeah.
I saw guys smoking, but I don't,
Yeah.
okay. All right. So I'm like, all right. And I looked around. Nobody else was drinking beer. I was the only
Right.
one who had a beer.
Right.
Everybody else had freaking iced tea.
Right.
Okay. And I'm like, oh, I'd really like some of that iced tea, but I didn't want to be rude.
Right.
Okay. So I'm like, okay. So I'm trying to suck down this beer that's now warm because it's been out of the refrigerator for a minute. And so I'm drinking it and I'm choking this stuff down. And I'm not a big beer drinker. So I'm drinking it down. And finally, I set the empty bottle down. So I'm trying to wait a polite amount of time where I could politely say, oh, may I have a glass of iced tea as well?
Right.
Okay. And just as I was getting ready to do it, one of the guys pours the last cup into his cup and then they kind of set it aside. Okay, this is done, no more. And I'm like, oh
Right.
God. And so finally, so then he goes, okay, hey, we're going to take you out to dinner. I'm like, okay, well, it's midnight by this time.
Right.
Okay. So so I asked him, I said, well, I need to use the restroom. You have a toilet? He goes, oh yes, we're down the hall. So I walk out, go 2 steps, and there's a toilet. And in the darn toilet is a water fountain, okay, that I didn't know about.
Right.
Okay. And I'm like, oh golly. So they take me out to dinner and we have a nice little dinner. And then they drop me off at the hotel. And my buddy Eb Welch is going nuts because he hasn't heard from me since 6:30 in the morning or 7 o'clock
Right.
in the morning. And of course, this is before cell phones and
Right.
everything. And he's going nuts because we have to leave in 4 hours or five
Right.
hours. And so Nakazato Sensei actually took us to the airport. He was very kind. And I really would have liked to have studied under Nakazato because I really like their Kobudo. Okay, but I just didn't have I was so focused on finding Tozan-ryu. Now, if the guys in Tozan-ryu who had said, "Hey, thanks, but no thanks,"
Right. Then
I
you
went,
might have
"Okay,
gone over there.
yeah, I
Right.
would have," because I really liked their style. I mean, I liked their stuff. And Nakazato was actually a really nice man. I really
Right.
enjoyed talking with him, and his wife was a wonderful person too. But you know, it just so happened that they
Yeah.
accepted
You
me, and I
you
was like,
found your guys. Right.
exactly,
But before
okay,
I let you go, let's talk about the Kempo team a little bit
okay,
and what you do with that. So this way people can be aware of that. And if anybody wants to contact you, they
okay.
can, they'll know what it's about.
All right. Well, the United States Kempo team, that's Kempo with an M, but in my logo, I have the M and the N superimposed over each other so it can be for anybody that does any style of Kempo.
Okay.
Back in around 2000, a Romanian Kempo guy named Amato Zaharia wanted to start an international organization that would promote Kempo through competition, through real, true, hard competition, full contact fighting, uh, traditional events, semi-contact, for those people who do that. But he wanted it to encompass all the things that Kempo does. But he was having trouble with the Romanian government because sport over there is a cabinet level position, just like we have Department of Agriculture, they have the
Yep.
Department of Sport. And in order for him to do that, he had to get Kempo recognized as a national sport in Romania. So in order to do that, he had to have an outside a national or international organization outside of Romania recognize him as a legitimate Kempo instructor. And then he could then apply for the correct permits. So he sent out letters and emails to every Kempo organization that he could find, all the ones in the United States, Larry Tatum, Jeff Speakman, all these guys. And nobody responded to him. Well,
Okay.
we happened to get his letter, And the guy who was doing the international correspondence, representation for us at the time, kind of went, oh, this looks interesting. So we contacted him back and we said, hey, we'd be happy to help you. This sounds interesting, the competition wise. And the main goal with my sensei, with Dr. Cherry and his successor, Soki Ray Farrell, who's now the head of the organization, was we want to spread our art overseas. We had several dojos in the United States. We want to try our hand overseas. And so so he was like, wow, that's really cool. We were like that. So Mr. Farrell and one of the other guys that was doing that was the international relations guy at the time. I now have that title, was Rob Rivers. Both he and Mr. Farrell went to Romania, and Amato, laid on the dog for him. And he took them, they did a tour all over Romania, did seminars at different dojos, were on television, were on radio, newspaper articles, about them, starting this big organization. And so Ray said, well, I'll be happy to help you. So Ray's only concession was, I'm not just going to give you a certificate. I need you have to perform. I need to see what you guys can do.
Right.
Okay. So he actually tested them and took them through a test and said, okay, well, yeah, you guys are legitimate. I mean, it's a different style than me, but you are legitimate,
Right.
So he certified them as, X amount of black belts, and a bunch of Amato's black belts got certified as Shodans so they could run their own dojos and stuff like that. And so soon after, the Amato came to the United States, and one of his ex-wives lived in the United States with his first son. And so he was going to kill two birds with one stone, come over and do a tour with us, and then go visit his family. And so it was kind of nice, where we got to, and then in 2003, we organized the first world championship in Bucharest, Romania. We had 11 team members. Well, we had about 12 or 13 people. We had more people go because we had family members and stuff like that go, but we had 11 competitors, myself and a bunch of the other guys. And we won 3 gold, 2 silver, and about 18 bronze medals, I think. The 11 of us. We won enough so that we won the 3rd place overall team trophy. The 2nd place team trophy had 55 members on their team. And Romania won first, and they had 113 members on their team.
So how many participants did you have in that first one?
Probably about 500.
Wow, that's good. That's
it was
a big
a lot.
number.
It was a lot.
It's a big number. That's a good number.
And we've grown ever since. The last tournament we had was this past April, was in Portugal, right outside of Lisbon, and we had over 1,000 competitors in the Kempo tournament, and then we ran an open tournament side by side. Now, what we've done for the last few years, because it's so expensive to run a big tournament like this, and we really don't bring in enough revenue just from the tournament fees and the team fees and stuff like that to actually pay for everything. What we've done is we've run an open tournament alongside of it so that anybody can enter that.
Right. That helps pay for everything.
Exactly. And the way we work it is that, let's say, for instance, I have 5 members on my team, and I'm only allowed two people in any particular category, like say 18 to 35, 85 kilogram and over, full contact fighter. I can only have 2 people in that category. Now, in the 80 kilogram, I can have 2 people. In the 75 kilogram, I can have 2 people. So every 5 kilograms, we can have 2 people. But, or in adult male kata, can only have 2 people. Okay. So if I have an alternate who goes, in case somebody gets hurt or sick, they can slip in and be their replacement. But if their guy doesn't need a replacement, they're sitting there going, okay, well, I came all this way, I don't get to do anything.
They can compete in the open tournament.
They go to the open tournament. Also, after a particular event is done, let's say the adult male kata is done, if it hasn't been run in the other category, the people who are in the Kempo tournament can slide over and be there and get an extra medal for the team. Or for themselves. So it gives the incentive for the player to, well, I can go and I'm going to represent the United States in the World Championship Kempo team for this category, or these categories. But I'm also have the opportunity to slip over here and do others, because at the open tournament, they have additional slots. They have like a a musical form, or they have, some of these other things that you would find in open tournaments.
Right.
They have additional opportunities that we don't offer because we do everything very traditionally.
Right.
Um,
And
we
the one
teach,
thing I want to
yeah,
mention, because I did read through the stuff you gave me,
yeah,
and you guys don't just do full contact. You're doing kata, you're doing kobudo.
correct,
You have a ground fighting thing where they're
right,
doing more. It's more of a grappling thing where you're not allowed
exactly,
to strike. So it covers a lot of the bases in terms
right.
of
We
what you
we
guys are doing. Right.
we do.
Self defense. I think you also
Yeah.
have.
We
So
do the main thing we do, the main fighting thing they do is called what we refer to as full Kempo. And
right,
it's just full contact kickboxing. Okay.
right,
Leg kicks, stuff like
right,
that, hit to the head, no elbows, no knee. You can knee in a clinch, but only to the
right,
body,
right,
no elbows. And it's kind of their mainstay. Then
right,
they have one called knockdown, which is kind of like, it looks like Kyokushin karate with grappling.
right,
Okay, so it's like MMA, but
right.
I'm not allowed to hit you in the head with a fist, elbow, or knee.
Okay.
I can kick you in the head, but I can't use my fist.
Right,
Okay, so it makes you focus on proper technique, maybe more to the body, and so it's not just head hunting.
right,
Okay. Then we have a semi-contact like we do here in the States, but it's a little harder contact.
right,
And then we have a submission grappling where there's no striking allowed, but
right.
it's just submission grappling. And then we also offer MMA division. Sometimes if we have a bunch of guys who would like to do it, they put an MMA division
Okay.
together, for a particular weight class, and it's a regular MMA match. The good thing about this is that there's only one round in any of the competitions. There's only
Okay.
one round, and it's head to head. So me and Joe Blow get together and we fight. I get one round, 3 minutes to win. If I don't win, I'm out.
Right.
Okay, there's no repertoires or
Right.
there's no
Right.
second round, and the other guy goes on. So there's no multiple rounds. It's not a 3 round bout or anything
Right.
like that. And so that way you have to do all your stuff now.
Now.
You can't, I'm gonna look at it, see how he does,
Right.
but you got to get out there and you got to fight now. So it's much more exciting to watch
Right.
because everybody's on their ball.
Right.
So then we have kata, weapons kata, we have self-defense. Now we started off with a weapon self-defense separate and then a empty hand self-defense competition separate, where you have to do 4 scenarios. Okay.
Okay.
And but then they said, well, that takes too much time. So they combine them. So you have to do 4. So 2 are empty hand only and 2 are attacking weapon only.
Okay.
I, as the participant, as the person who's the Tore, I am not allowed to use a weapon unless I take it away from the uke.
The other guy.
Okay.
Okay.
So I start off empty-handed, being attacked by a weapon. So 2 empty-hand attacks, 2 weapon attacks, and I can take the weapon away and use it on the bad guy. And so we do that, and that's very exciting to watch because the Romanians especially have become very proficient at everything. They can do everything. I'm so happy to know these guys because they are the true essence of what you should be if you're a competitor, because they do all the stuff. They don't
Right.
pick and choose, well, I'm only a
Right.
this or only
They
that.
don't specialize.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Well,
some of them,
I've got to
some of
say,
them, yeah,
I got to say, like, I'm not a sport martial arts guy. But again, I'm a firm believer in whatever makes people happy, I'm all for it. As long as it's legal, I'm all for it, right?
right.
But the one thing I'll say with reading through your stuff is there's a lot of variety there. Meaning,
Yeah,
like, you're not just doing, oh, we just do full contact fighting, or we just do this. Like, there's a
right.
lot of the bases are covered in this. You're doing
Well,
a wide variety of things, which
I mean,
I find a little bit more interesting.
I remember when I was speaking with Amato early on, he says, yes, we're fighters, we like to fight,
Right.
we get out there, but people have to go to work on Monday.
Right.
Yeah. I
Right.
mean, so not everybody can get out there and just absolutely,
Right. Beat the hell out of each
yeah,
other. Right.
exactly. Because what's funny was we say that we usually start the tournament on like a Wednesday or a Thursday and go through till Saturday, and then everything's done by Saturday. Well, by Saturday, everybody's limping around, they're
Right.
kind of hobbling and
Right.
stuff like
Right.
that. So we're like, okay, okay, you obviously been to a Kempo World Championship, okay,
Right. Right.
and so anyway, we decided to participate, and we have had astounding success. with the small teams that we've been able to muster. Unfortunately, in the United States, we're not supported by the government like a lot of these other countries are. Not every country is supported by the
Not
government,
every, but a lot of them are. Right.
some countries are fully supported. They get all their funding from the government, and they're encouraged to go out and compete in all these different places. And then some are partially, and also they're incentivized by monetary reward. They don't get a purse, so it's not professional,
Right.
but they are. It's like the Olympics. Like, say, if
Right.
one of our Olympic guys wins a medal, they get a certain amount of money. Like a gold
Right.
medal, they get $50,000 to help supplement their training. So it's similar over there. In Romania, if a participant wins a gold medal, they get 1,500 euros.
Okay.
If they win a silver, they get about 1,100 euros. If they get a bronze, they get about 800 euros.
And
Okay, this is at an international.
And I'm sure if you guys host a tournament here, the government will give them funds to come.
No,
Oh, they don't?
no, we don't get nothing from the government.
No, no. I don't mean you guys. I'm saying the Romanians.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
I
the
mean,
Romanians,
if they come here
the
for a
government,
competition, yeah.
right? The government,
Oh yeah.
because when I went to India, I did a 3-city tour in India teaching Isshinryu, and I met with the president of the Indian Karate Federation.
Mhm.
I didn't know why I was meeting with him because I didn't speak Tamil, the language that
Right.
they were speaking. But my student from London, he speaks English and Tamil. And all of a sudden we're talking. He's showing me stuff. I'm talking to him about stuff, translating. Um, and then all of a sudden, the three guys that brought me there are all excited. They're hugging each other. They're shaking his hand. Okay, I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And then we get out to the car, and as soon as we get outside, the guys are hugging me, and they're like, Sensei, he's going to recognize Isshinryu as an official style. There'd been another guy there who taught Isshinryu, but he'd gotten himself in trouble, an Indian guy, so the government wouldn't recognize Isshinryu. But because I came there as a representative, Shimabuku Kichido, the head of the system, he was going to recognize Isshinryu. And I said, and I, again, at the time, I didn't understand what the big deal was. And then they said, no, no, you don't understand. Like, if we have the IWKA championships and it's in the States, the government will give us some funding to help us to pay for travel to go there. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
now I see
Yeah.
why the government representation is important.
Yeah.
So, but I will say, as an American, I don't really want the government involved in my martial arts.
Right. I mean, I'd be happy to take their money, but as long as they don't tell me what to do, I
That's
mean,
always the
yeah,
issue, right?
yeah.
They
Well,
start
now,
telling us, well, you can't do this, you can do that,
well, I mean, I get criticized quite a bit from other countries, good naturedly, I think,
Right.
where they say, how can the most richest country in the world have a small team of 5 people? I'm like, well, we got to pay for it ourselves,
Right.
Bubba. We don't get
Right.
money from that. I mean,
Right.
it's hard to get sponsors. I mean, it
Right.
is hard. I
It's
mean,
really hard.
we
Yeah, no
get we
kidding.
get mom and pop people around locally, and people
Right.
pay for themselves, but I've funded the team out of my own pocket for 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And, get some sponsors and stuff, but most everybody that's done has paid their own way.
Right.
Well, I've got in Austin, Texas, Brian Duffy, who runs a Kempo school, Ed Parker style school. Ed Parker was his sensei.
Uh-huh.
He pays for his own way, and his
Yeah.
students have all paid their way. I mean, I've had several of his guys, he and his guys, his son, have all been part of the team. I've gotten guys from, Brian Fung from San Francisco. I was able to get him some sponsorship, but he paid most of his own way. Um, Guys from Akron, Ohio, who are great fighters. Josh Hillman and his group over there. Uh, Excellent fighters. Won 4 gold medals apiece
Wow.
at the World Championships we had in April. Good fight, and all over the 20 years we've had tremendous people. But over the years, there's been when we've had economic hardships here in the United States, I haven't been able to get anybody to go.
Right.
It's been me by myself. I was a
Right.
lone representative for several years in a row,
Right.
and I got criticized for it. But then again, I was praised for it. Like, hey, no matter what the issue, you always came.
Yeah, you're
You
still
always
there.
showed up.
Yeah, and
Now, to give you an idea about the monetary reward from different countries, I was telling you about, Romanian guy might get 1,500 euros for a gold medal. If you're a Russian and you win at the World Championships, you get 10,000 euros, but you get nothing for silver and nothing for bronze. So the incentive is to
is to
win
win.
gold.
is to
Okay.
win.
So,
Right.
I mean, even some of the other Western European countries get a little bit of help,
Right.
either through their national organizations or the government. You know,
Right.
they slip them some money
Right.
through some way. But and that just isn't the case in the United States because we've got so many different organizations.
Right.
I've tried to get organizations to jump on board with me and be part of the Kempo.
Right.
The only person that really has ever done any significant, besides Brian Duffy and his group, the AKF or FK or whatever, in out in Austin, besides him and my own organization that I am under, has been Jeff Speakman. Okay,
Okay.
because for a while Jeff Speakman was the president of the International Kempo Federation, who is the sponsor of the World Championships, and for several years he was the thing. But you know, Jeff has so many other things on his plate. He really wasn't able to put
Right.
that much effort into to bringing
Right.
people on board. He had some of his students come, and they did okay. But you know, I told him, I said, you know, if, in his I think his primary thing was to also get other schools in Europe to jump on board with his Kempo 5.0, which is
Right.
what he teaches, and which is an honorable thing, you know, which is I completely understand. But the way they think of they want to see before they do.
Right.
So I told him, I said, they're going to want to see your guys get out here and fight consistently,
Right.
and before they decide to join your organization.
Right.
You know, a couple guys might do it,
Right.
but you know, said if you want to get widespread, you got to bring your people out here. And
Right.
I think Jeff is thinking more of his students at home who would be choosing between, do I want to go to the world championships with the money I have, or do I want to go to our annual
Right.
uh,
Right.
Jeff Speakman convention in Las
Right.
Vegas every year? So
Right.
it's like, who do I support?
Right.
You can't do
Right.
both.
Right.
So he didn't want them to have to choose.
Right.
So he actually stepped down, and now Amato, who's the creator of the organization, is actually the president now.
Okay.
And so we actually are actually looking for spokesmen who are really famous, you know, who would like to participate.
All right. Well,
Benny Urquidez comes out every year
okay.
and teaches seminars, and is a big fan of the Kempo team, and you know, and stuff. And what's funny is when Jeff was out here the first time, went to the first Kempo tournament back in 2011 when he was asked to participate as the president. He he had been touting Kempo 5.0 as having grappling inside Kempo. That
Right.
because Ed Parker had thought about putting judo grappling
Right.
into Kempo and had a big syllabus already made up. You know, it was kind of sitting on a shelf, and he hadn't really started to implement it yet. Well, then he passed away,
Right.
so it just sat on a shelf. Well, Jeff got it down and was like, okay, well, let's kind of modify that and let's use Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as the
Right.
base rather than judo, and because it's a little bit more popular and
Right.
stuff. So he worked with a bunch of different guys and kind of came up with his you know, Kempo 2, Kempo 3, Kempo 4, Kempo 5, and he finally figured, you know, he decided Kempo 5 was what he wanted, and it's really a fantastic, you know, thing. But when he came over to Romania for the World Championship and saw it, and he went, oh, you guys already do grappling. He goes, yeah, we've been doing
Right.
this for 25 years, you know.
Right.
And he goes, oh, so he was kind of surprised that
Right.
other people were putting grappling into Kempo. And he goes, well, we've been doing this for years, you know, it's not new to us, you know.
Right.
So it was kind of interesting to see that. But Jeff's a really nice guy, very excellent martial artist, just a really interesting person, and really dedicated to his students, and his students love him, and he knows all his students from all the different dojos. And you know, anytime we have a camp or something, somebody will come up from a dojo from Phoenix, and he'll
Right.
know the 6-year-old kid, you know, and it's
Right.
like, wow, you know, that's really cool. So
So what
so anyhow,
I'm gonna do is I'll put your contact information
okay,
in the description,
okay.
along with your bio,
All right.
and
Well,
this way,
I want to kind of go over what my ranks are, and to kind of clarify that so people don't misunderstand where I am in my martial arts.
okay.
In the under the American Kempo-Karate Association that I represent, doing the Jiu-Jitsu and the Torakenryu Jiu-Jitsu, I'm a seventh dan.
Okay.
Okay, and that's what I claim whenever I write my rank down for advertisements. I put seventh dan. in the International Seishinkai Karate Union, which is a Shitoryu karate organization under Robert Burgermeister, who lives in Phoenix, or actually Fountain Hills. I think he lives in Fountain Hills.
Oh, Fountain Hills.
Uh,
Okay.
and I'm an eighth dan under him, and I'm recognized by the Dai Nippon Butokukai.
Okay.
Okay, because I've traveled to Japan and trained there, and in their annual Butokusais and stuff like that. So I've had a really excellent training with them. And then in the IKF, or in my Shindokan, okay, in the Tozan-ryu, I'm recognized as a fifth dan.
Okay.
Okay, and that's only because there's nobody there to promote me anymore.
Right.
That's just what I have. And then in the International Kempo Federation, who organizes the world championships and stuff like that, they recognized a few of us recently as I was recognized as a ninth dan for my work through the Kempo Federation, promoting Kempo and doing all the different things that I do with them, plus the United States Kempo team, and
Right.
my seminars and the places I go and promote it and stuff like that. And the fact that I'm constantly trying to promote it. And even though I've probably written to every martial arts organization in the United States, Kempo group in the United States, or karate group, or full contact group, or MMA group, everybody in the United States, everybody wants to be the chief of their own little tribe. Okay,
Yeah, I don't think
nobody.
it's just the United States. I think it's a human nature
Yeah,
problem. That's what I
yeah,
think it is.
yeah.
So,
Nobody want it. They would be part of it if they could lead it,
right.
but they don't want to be part of it if they have to be side by side or under somebody.
Right.
And I'm like, nobody's under anybody.
Right.
I'm the United States representative for the International Kempo. I'm the
Right.
North American representative for the United
Right.
States Kempo Federation. So regardless of if you join, it's just like joining a football team.
Right.
Okay, I'm the coach, or
Right.
I'm the owner of the team.
Right.
Okay, you do, everybody does what I still compete. Okay,
Right.
so yeah, I'm 70 years old, and I stopped competing for a few years when my knees started getting bad. Well, then I got surgery, so now I'm back competing again. So so that's where, so far as the IKF, I'm a ninth dan to them.
Okay.
So, but when I talk about Kempo team stuff and IKF stuff, then I'll put my ninth dan down.
Right.
If I'm doing stuff through the Shito organization, I'll put my eighth dan down. If I'm doing my normal dojo stuff, locally advertising, I'll
Right.
put seventh dan down. So if you look at different material, you might see a different discrepancy in my ranks,
Well,
and that's why I do that.
it's the same with me because I teach so many arts. I mean, they
Right.
have dan grades in all these different arts.
Yeah.
I don't say I'm a this dan when I'm
Oh,
teaching that art. I say the dan I am in that
yeah.
art,
Well, in additionally, I'm also a sixth dan in Iaido. Okay,
Okay.
I've for the last 20 years I've been studying Tenshin-sho Jigenryu,
Okay.
Iaido, and Kenjutsu. Okay,
Okay.
which is a small family art uh, in Japan.
Okay.
Back in 2005, I believe 2006 maybe, um, the headmasters of the system, Kaganori Ueno, and his brother came to the United States um, to kind of look for people, Americans who might want to represent their style.
Yeah, they want to expand and they
Yes,
want to make
okay,
sure their art
outside of
doesn't
Japan.
die. I mean,
Exactly, because
that's the big issue, right?
nothing, people are not doing stuff, traditional martial arts in Japan very much
Nope.
anymore,
Nope.
especially Iaido and stuff.
Yep.
So they came there, and we happened to know they came over with a guy named Kimo Ferrara from Hawaii, who's a Kempo guy. And they happened to know each other and got hooked up. And so they all came over together. And Kimo was going to be performing at a big martial arts convention in
Okay.
New Jersey, in
Okay.
Atlantic City. So we heard that Kimo, and we're friends with Kimo, so we were going to, he recently passed away, but we were good friends with him. So we were going to go visit him in New Jersey, okay, and just try to say hi. So a bunch of us got in a van and we all drove to New Jersey. We hadn't planned on doing anything other than walking around the convention and hanging out with Kimo. And we got there, and Kimo's like, "Hey, you got to meet these guys. Okay, they're traditional, sword guys from Japan. They don't even speak English, but they want guys to represent their style. We know you guys do Mugairu, and so want to meet you guys." we meet these guys. So we went up to the hotel room, and fortunately, Kimo's wife is Japanese, so she
Okay.
translate for us,
That's a help.
and so she was explaining to them about who we were and what we did, and we were very respectful. We just were really, they were telling us stories and stuff like
Right.
that. We were like, wow, these guys are legitimate.
Right.
These guys weren't just, okay, we do sword. These guys were freaking legitimate,
Right.
like royalty, kind of
Right.
like. So he says, "Oh, hey, you want to hold my sword?" So he pulls out this sword. He goes, "Yes, this sword is like 450 years old. It was made by the such and such swordsmith. It's probably worth like $25,000 or more, whatever." And he's, "You want to hold it?" We're like, "Oh,"
Right.
And so he was just so nice. And so we started. Immediately we brought him back a few months later for a seminar. We had been doing seminars with Chosei Motobu, Choki Motobu's son,
Done. Right.
and doing Motobaru Kempo
Right.
and some stuff. And they have a sword style within their system
Right.
too. Okay. And so we were doing a little bit of that. And so we brought them over when we had a Motobu seminar, and they had known each other in Okinawa, I mean,
Right.
in Japan. And evidently they're related somehow. I don't
Okay.
know exactly, but there was some distant connection between them. And so they came over, and we were doing some really cool stuff, and we really liked their sword style. So we said, "We got you. We're on board.
Okay.
Okay, we'll be your representatives here." And I was the first dojo in America to represent them. And then we
Cool.
had like three other guys in our group wanted to represent them too. We had a guy in College Park, or not College Park, Severna Park, Maryland, who was interested. We had one in Fredericksburg, Virginia, Stafford, Virginia, and then we had the head my sensei, who was Mugairu, uh, in Charlotte, North Carolina, who's Ray Farrow, who's now the head of the organization. He liked it so much he stopped doing Mugairu and was only doing the Tenshinro Shinshicho Jigaru. And then several of his guys are now high-ranking members in the organization. I'm a sixth dan, and I was recently promoted to sixth dan. And Ueno Sensei has retired, and his new successor is uh, oh shoot. Okay, Japanese names kind of elude me sometimes. I'll think of it in just a second. But he's now taken over. He's been in the United
Okay.
States several times, and he's putting on a seminar this March, I believe, down in Miami.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
so I'll be going down to Miami to train. We have a really big school in Miami. They're
Okay.
really, really good.
Good.
And we have schools in Miami, Charlotte, myself, um, and we have individual people that practice around the United States. They have a little club, maybe two or three people,
Okay.
and so it's and we had one in Germany. I don't know if they're still active, but we're really trying to expand
Well, that's
the.
good. And listen, I'm going to end it here because we've been going for quite a while, believe it or not.
Oh, okay. Uh, oh, almost 2 hours.
Yeah.
Ooh, all right.
So, listen, I appreciate you coming on. I'm glad we met at that at Walt's seminar a
Yeah.
little
Well,
over a
there's so
month
much
ago.
more we can talk about. Golly,
Well,
there's
we can come on again. I
yeah.
mean,
Okay.
there's no,
We'll
plenty of
pick a
people have come
specific
on more
topic.
than one. You
Yeah,
know.
pick something. Pick a small topic.
Okay.
Stand on it.
But I appreciate you coming on. This will come out. This will drop next Sunday.
Okay.
All right, and I'll send you a link so you can
Okay.
watch it.
Well, I'll send it out to all my karate friends, and we'll
Good. Yeah, I
let
appreciate
me
it.
let me give a shout out to Josh Hillman
Okay.
from Akron, Ohio, and his students, Stephanie and Brad, who went with me to the World Championships in April, and they all won gold medals in various types of full contact
Okay.
fighting and
Very good.
grappling. So they are excellent fighters out there. They do a real. They're Gotham Garage. They're in Akron area.
Okay.
And then Brian Fung, who lives out in San Francisco, he also won 4 gold medals,
Okay.
in the traditional events. And myself, I won a gold, 2 silvers, and a bronze,
Oh, very good.
at 70 years old. So I was pretty pleased with that. And so if anybody is interested in traditional events, they're very strong in traditional events over there, or various types of fighting, full contact, knockdown, MMA, submission grappling, and semi-contact. Okay, for those people who like to do that. Okay, so we have it, and we try to include everybody.
Right. So listen, thanks for coming on.
All right, sir. Well,
Appreciate
thanks
it.
much. You take
And
it easy. We'll talk later.
I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Okay. Thank
All
you a
right.
lot, sir.
Thanks a
All
lot.
right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So I hope you enjoyed my interview with Robert Zingg Sensei. He was a very, very fun guy to talk to. Great stories. Really enjoyed listening to him. Again, please click that like, share, subscribe button. Consider becoming a monthly member. I'll be doing that live class on YouTube. It's a YouTube live class, right? Through the channel for members, all right? This coming Sunday, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Arizona time, on Isshinryu Body Mechanics, all right? Also want to mention my Taiji master, Chen Jianghua, will be here. He'll be in New York, end of January, by me out in Arizona, first weekend in February, all right? So if you're interested in that, there'll be links to both of those in the description, okay? So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next podcast. Take care.